Laura. How's everybody? Today we're talking about SketchUp and Google Earth. What they call it is geolocation. In other words, putting your building in the real world so you can see what's happening around it. There's a couple ways to do this, and I'll go over the first one, which is if you already have a model, you can introduce Google Earth right into your drawing. So that's what this is. This is a little quick house that I've used for seminars and webinars quite a bit, and I wish I could live here, to tell you the truth. So how do we go about doing this? The key thing here initially is to get what's called a Google Earth image, and essentially you can extract an area out of a Google Earth map, if you will. Let me see, I got to pull this down just a little bit. There we go. So you go to the File menu, and there's an option here for geolocation, and you pick Add Location. So it'll take a minute here. What opens up is kind of pseudo Google Earth image, if you will. It doesn't look quite like the real Google Earth, but you don't actually need to have Google Earth on your computer to do this. You do need an internet connection, so if you're trying to follow along, make sure you have that set up. So this will go out and try to find something. Initially, I'm just going to pick some address. I'm going to give it a general place at this point. I'll put in the town that I live in. What that'll do is get you to the center of town, if you will. If you have a specific address, and I'll show you that here as we go along, you can plug that in as well. So if you want to do your house or a building you're working on, you know the address generally, you'll be able to find it. So just put in your address, hit enter, and it will take you essentially to the center of town. From here, you can expand this window as much as you'd like. You can pan it just by clicking on it with your left mouse button and move this around. Try to find the place you're looking for. Here you can see we've got Main Street and Central Avenue. Not a very big town, but you get the idea, and there's a lot of rural area around this. So I'm just going to go out actually and pick an area that might be suitable for this house. Well, I don't think we want to put it in the middle of a cemetery. That's not very nice. We'll pick this empty space here. So kind of center that up in your window. Look for that to be the center of your work, and pick Select Region. And what that does is it throws up another window here that has these 4 blue pins on it, and with these 4 blue pins you can just drag this window in and be a little more focused. What I found is you get too big an area, SketchUp gets a little confused by that. So try to keep it just focused on the area that you want. If in the long run you decide you want more area to this image, you can add that down the road. So once you have this, so again, I can reshape this however I like and click on Grab. And what that will do is it'll throw that image in a second here. Please do it. Yeah, it's grinding away a little bit. There. So that image comes in directly from Google Earth. Like I say, you don't need to have Google Earth in your computer for this to work. These are all the houses and things around here, and I don't know if this is a park or whatever, but we're going to invade the park. Here's our model. So what you saw here initially was we had the model drawn, and there was nothing else in that drawing except the house. This is one way to do this. We can reverse this option as well, where we could have that image first, and we'll look at that. So there's our house. I think the key thing here to keep in mind is that you should have this house as either a group or a component, so you can move this around in here very easily. Okay? Don't make it a whole bunch of parts. It just makes your life more difficult. The nice part about this is that once you place your house in Google Earth, north is north. It already knows north is what direction north is. I think in this case north is actually to the right. The point of all that is that you can study shadows. So that's generally a problem in SketchUp models. You're trying to set up, sun and shadows, and you don't really know which way is north in that model. Used to be able to do that in SketchUp, but since they introduced this Google Earth option, they actually eliminated that. So we had our house, and we bring in this model of Google Earth. This is not three-dimensional. However, what happens when you bring in this image is it actually introduces some additional layers. And let's see if we can find them here. There they are. So one's called location snapshot, which is what you're looking at here right now, and the other is called location terrain. As you can see, the snapshot is on, this box is checked, and the terrain right now is not on. So I'm going to check that, and I'm going to uncheck the snapshot. So what you can see that's happened is it's actually taken that surface and formed it to what the true terrain would be. Now I'll give you a caveat here. This is not super accurate. You're probably plus or minus 5 feet on this. So it's a little hard to work on, to be honest with you, because it's hard to put your building on that curve. And one of the other problems is that if you locate the building on that flat stuff, and you can see it here, you can see the building's actually kind of buried, which is fine, but this is plus or minus 5 feet, so it gives you a good idea, but I'm not going to say it's perfect. You're far better off with a true survey of the property from an engineer or for yourself and build that topography. I don't know if we went over that before, but maybe we can touch on topography a little bit. So this gives you an idea. You got houses here falling off the cliff and things of that nature, but it's pretty usable. I think mostly for locating your house and your buildings, and obviously finding the surroundings. Let's put the snapshot back on. And one of the things that happens here quite often with this kind of situation is you may import this and get nothing but a big gray box. And that happens quite often to people. You may get something that looks like that. That has to do with SketchUp's face style. So if you have this, make sure you look at the styles dialog box, or styles toolbar, I apologize for that, which is this guy here. And these are all the face options you have. First one is X-ray, next one is back edges. This is just wireframe, hidden line, and that also will make a mess of things because it just eliminates that face altogether. This is called, what do they call this one? Shaded, and this one is the one you typically look at. It's called shaded with textures. So if you have this, when it shows up on your screen, and it happens fairly often, even a style you might be using in your drawing maybe doesn't have texture added to it. You definitely need to have that texture, so shaded with texture. Otherwise you're not going to get this image. That image is considered texture. Okay, so don't get frustrated if you end up with a big gray box. Make sure you go to the styles dialog or toolbar here. If you don't have that, go to view. Let's see, this is 16, so now it's in another place. Window and styles. So make sure you have that set up. It's a little more complicated in 16, unfortunately, but they end up over here along the right side of the screen. You may have, if you just open 16, you may have actually just a default tab up there. But you click on these tabs and the windows will open. These used to be under the window menu, but they're now over here along the right side. I've customized a little bit. So, what do you do with this? The idea here is, here's our street, and if I may or may not know the property lines, I can at least approximate them. You can literally come in here and draw on top of this. So I'm just going to use the line tool here. And if I had property dimensions, I'd be a little better off here. But you can draw in your property. So that's going to make a face right on top of this face. We can make that transparent if we want by putting a transparent material on there. And I can find glass so we can see through it. Where's my glass? There we go. And just dump it on there. So it's a translucent, transparent face, if you will, but at least it gives me the idea where this property is. If you do have a survey, something of that nature, you can be more specific and actually lay out these dimensions. I'm going to be very general here because I don't have those, but I can stretch this face out if I want, make it a little bigger. Okay, so that face is there. I like to make it transparent just so I can see through it. If it's white like you saw it initially, it's a little more difficult to work with. So that's our property. If I use the tape measure tool, I would drag over what I would consider, let's call it 8 feet. This, by the way, is to scale. This is 1:1. So AutoCAD and SketchUp are also both 1:1. So you don't have to worry about changing scales or anything here. Your model and this image are matching. We'll put in 25 feet at the front. And we'll make that bigger. I'm going to move this back kind of in line with these other houses on the street, which I've run into zoning ordinances that require you to do that. So what I've done is basically said I'm laying out the area, the footprint of the area that I can work in. And here's my house. So at this point, I can move this house wherever I like. Because it's a group, this makes it very simple to do. Okay, this looks like it's a little low. So if it's kind of sunk in the ground, you can move this around. There, that's better. Now the nice part with this, you can move it around all you like. You can see your setbacks, decide which way you want this to be. For example, my garage is over here, but for example, I'd like that garage to be facing some other direction. With the rotate tool, I can take this and rotate it, say, 90 degrees. And then move the model again. So it allows you the opportunity to locate your house in the real world. Now, you know, kind of what's the purpose of this, right? The purpose for me is context, so I can see how I'm relating to the rest of the world, and shadows. If I turn the sun on here, over here, it will show me. I think I'm going to paint this back to white, and you'll see it a little better. Okay, we're a little bit interfering. I'm going to move this surface up just like an inch or so, just so that it's not conflicting with the Google Earth image. So here is what I'm talking about with shadows. We can now see how this building will maybe affect someone else's property, or how these shadows are going to work. Remember, this is true north. So let's see, right now I'm at noon. Move it to noon, so you can see it's actually pretty straight out. And I'm at the end of the year, so I'm going to put it in July, for example. I shouldn't get a whole lot of shadow because the sun's straight up and it's in the middle of the year. But you can see what the shadows are going to do on your property. I've had people say, well, where should I put my garden? You know, I want to grow some tomatoes over here and I need sunlight, that kind of stuff. So you can play with this, set it to whatever you want. If I set this, it's a little good trick. I'm going to make this all the way at 12, or at the end of the day. And let's make it in July. So what's happening, I'm all the way at the end of the day, so that sun's coming from the west and that's east, off to the right. So I know for sure, obviously if I know this property and what's happening here, I would know which way's which. But as I move the sun around, you can see the reaction that that sun has on the rest of the property. You can play this, you know, what's going to look like at noon, what's going to look like in the morning. Okay? So that gives you this assurity that you have this in the right place. You can add stuff to this if you'd like. For example, I may move this over. So now we're putting the building in the real world. And maybe I decide that I want to show a driveway in here. I'm not going to be very appropriate with my driveway probably. I want it to stay on axis here. Let's see. There we go. Get a little closer. You know, I'm going to turn the sun off. That's usually affecting this. The sun, by the way, will make your computer grind a lot more than it might normally. Use the tape measure tool to lay out this driveway, say, let's call it 20 feet wide. Be generous. And lay that in. So now what do I have? I have my driveway, I've got my house in there, I've got my setbacks. If I go to a top view, and I put this in parallel projection, essentially I've got a site plan. And I can use this, you know, within my drawings. If you're doing this in, say, AutoCAD, you want to export this to AutoCAD, or you want to export this to layout, you get a nice clean site plan with all your boundaries in there, your house located. You could actually dimension this, especially in layout. Okay, what other purpose is there in this? I'll go back to perspective. We can build, and I have to be just general. If I know the actual proportions of this house, I can do it. But I'm going to design, or I'm not going to design, I'm just going to build the houses adjacent. And, you know, it's up to you how perfect you want to make this, but you can literally trace these off of Google Earth. And back up, there's something over here. Something like that. And there's something over here. The only thing you have to know, what you're looking at here is you're actually looking at the roof and not the actual building. You know, so this footprint might be a little bigger. If you know the dimensions of this building, obviously you can put them in here. But you can pull that up. Let's say this house is 12 feet tall. I'm not going to draw the roof, but you can draw the roof on here as well. We'll go over here to this other house. And if you know the dimensions of these buildings, for example, you can actually draw them in here exactly. And let's say this house has a gable on it. And I'm just making this up because I don't know exactly what's going on here. But if you do, you could literally build the neighborhood. We'll put a little something on this just so we get some reality. And find that corner. There we go. And we'll pull this one over here. So you can see I've probably already kind of made this a little strange because this house probably doesn't work quite this way. This piece is probably over here, and this piece is probably over here. This piece is probably over here in line with that. Okay, so again, just kind of making it up, but it'll give you a little more sense of what's really going on. That's not what I want. I want this in the center. I'm going to draw a line across here just so I can find the center of this building. And use a tape measure tool, throw that on there. and draw this ridge. I'm going to kind of do this the hard way because normally I would make that a group. I'm going to use push-pull to do this. And just pull this across. Okay, so you get the sense of it. You can literally build the neighborhood. I know I've run into architectural committees who want to know what your house looks like in the world and how the other houses interact with it. Especially I've done some in Colorado up in the mountains where they get really crazy about it. You can also identify where the trees are. I'm outside the setback. But this could become invaluable. I've used this quite a bit for approvals for zoning, that sort of thing. What's your house look like in the rest of the world? If we go to front, let's say side of some sort, the other side. We can actually create, if we go to parallel projection, an elevation of the neighborhood, which I've had happen before. Actually, outside Chicago, I had to go measure 6 buildings up and down a street and draw them all, and then draw my building and what do they look like next to each other. This obviously would shortcut that quite a bit. You can be pretty accurate. I had to have, trace down surveys, everything for all those other properties. So this can help you with projects like that. Literally, this would reproduce what I'm talking about in Chicago. Depends where you are, you're going to get different ordinances. So I'll do it in perspective. If you have, for example, we'll put this back to see-through. Find my glass and mirrors since they've moved all this stuff. Put that back to see-through. And you can see there's trees. If you do have trees that you can stick in there, I think I have a few. Let's see, import. Go to where they are. I'm going to find those guys. Components, landscaping, trees, and we'll put in some kind of tree here. We'll use that one and import it in here and stick it where that tree is. So now you can start creating actually the whole environment. You can put trees, you can put cars, people. This gives you a map as to where your house is going to be. So if you decide maybe you want to put your house at an angle, something of that nature, you have the ability to see what that's going to do. And maybe your typical architect can't do anything normal. So, like me, you may want to set your house at an angle on that property. And this would allow you to see, does that fit? How does that work with the neighborhood? The other thing with the sun on, I'll paint this back to white. Wish I could just say revert, but it doesn't work that way. Colors, go back to white. The reason I'm doing this is I want to show you what happens with the shadows from these other buildings, which is also important. So I'll turn the sun back on. So now you can see this building may have a little effect on the shadow, this building over here. I know in Denver, for example, they actually have what's called sunlight ordinances, where you can't cast shadows on somebody else's house. But you can see here now, you can study that. So the shadow down here is actually being cast by this house over here. And depends on what time of day you work. You can see they might actually get a little nasty if you're at the wrong time of the year. So you can study that too. In the area here in Asheville, North Carolina, people plant gardens all over the place, so this could also impact them. It'll give you the opportunity to look inside the building. I don't know if I've got any interiors here, but you could also see what happens to the sun inside. Maybe this, that won't work in this particular drawing. Sorry. This is a different drawing. So we'll go back where we were. Now my house got underground somehow here. Oh, I know, the terrain's back on. Here, this is what can happen when that terrain is on. your building will be underground. And that may be true. You may actually have to move this up. Keep in mind, we're talking plus or minus 5 feet. I did this on my own house, and I know for sure one end of my house was not 5 feet underground, but that's the way it worked out. When you go back to turning that terrain layer off, or on, turn that off, what you're going to see is your house is probably floating over on the ground. So you have this kind of dichotomy between these two. You have to decide which one you want to use for your study. Again, I don't know, that topography is kind of just okay. I'll put it back on just for this purpose. You can draw in the streets if you like. Well, you just use the rectangle tool here. Drag this out. And it's not working too well. Oh, you know what? I'm on the terrain. That's the reason. And let's turn off the terrain. That's not the one I'm looking for, is it? There it is. Just turn that off. It's hard. You can't draw on that terrain. That's impossible. But you can start tracing streets, maybe sidewalks, whatever happens to be there. This guy looks like he has a sidewalk. So this gives you context if you want to get that far. You can take this as far as you like. I'll move this over so it lines up with that property. So if you have little irritations with your neighbors, things like that, you can solve this kind of stuff pretty quickly. So that's bringing it into your model. If there are any questions about that, feel free to throw them out there now. We're going to move on. Guess not. Okay. If you are now looking to create, say, the context, or your building is already there, or we're going to put a building into a situation. This again is that same Google Earth image that we brought into that other project, but this now we have the image first. We can do a couple of things with this. You can see there's quite a bit of context here. This is a little town outside of Chicago. This building right here in the foreground is actually I think, a 5-story building. And the premise here was this piece of property on the corner is available. This is a TIF district, so it's a tax incentive district. And the city wanted to encourage somebody to build a building here. This, unfortunately, is a guy who's kind of stubborn and decided he wants to leave his house there, and it's going to end up between two larger buildings. So I don't think that was a very good, move on his part, but it's not my lot. So remember, on that last one, we drew context, which is what's happening here. These buildings are created from the image that we have. So I'm going to pretend there's a building over here, and we'll just draw it in. We'll cover up these cars. They're ugly anyway. So we trace that, pull it up. Maybe this building's 20 feet tall. I'll type in 20 feet, hit enter. So now what I'm doing is creating the context around the new building. Here's that guy's house. This is actually a parking garage. And again, here, I didn't get too specific with this. I just tried to represent it because I'm not going to deal with that too much. But the guys who built this building were required to give the city this parking lot. Nice deal. Again, with shadows, you can play with this. Turn them on. You can see here it's a little more important when you start getting bigger buildings. You can see how you're going to cast shadows. And it may be, there's no building over here, but if there were, you can see how that might affect the building next door. So this building, I actually happen to have the plans for, and it's an existing building. And that's the existing building. We'll get into how exactly I did that. These are images plastered on here. But this is our building, and unfortunately this isn't a real building. I worked for the city at the time, out as a consultant, And they said, oh, you can do this building over here, can't you? And I said, yeah, sure. How much are you going to pay me? They said, nothing. I said, great. So I didn't spend a whole lot of time on it. The concept here was what would happen if we stuck a building in that corner, and what could we entice someone to build? There were limitations to height, those things we did adhere to. The parking garage got built because these guys were given like a 5-story building, which in this town is very unusual. So there's a little negotiation going on there. And what I want to show you here is how this texture got added to this building back here. So this one unfortunately already has the texture on it. I'm going to eliminate that. It must be from a previous seminar or something. Oops, I lost my drawing. Can't tell you why that's happening. Let's go back and eliminate that drawing. Oh, great. I lost it altogether. Well, you know what, it's here. There we go. Wrong drawing. Oh, darn. Why does it keep coming back? There we go. Keeps wanting to come back on me. So we'll get some color. I just want to blank this out so you can see how this happened. And this is definitely from an old drawing. It's already given you too much hint to what you can do with this. Literally, you can draw on top of the building itself and start creating three-dimensional quality to that. So what we need here, this is my building. I know that's the footprint because I got it from Google Earth. I also got it from their plans. And get rid of that line. So that's the mass of that building. And actually it's kind of a nice easy one because it's a big box and it's a flat roof. So it's one of the simpler ones to use. But how did I get this texture here onto that building here? So that's the same block. What we're going to do is actually import a texture, which is a photograph in this case. I'll show you hopefully what I have in my files. This should have been open, so I apologize. Well, let's just get it from here. So File, Import. Should take me to my menu. There we go. Here what I want to do is actually go back to my desktop, go to Half Moon Seminars and Commercial Building. That's not it. Geolocation, let's find it. There we go. Find image files here. Okay, what this is, that is actually the picture from the building owner's brochure, his sales documentation. So he's trying to sell space in this building, and that's from his brochure. So I had some convenience here. You can take your own pictures, whatever you want to do. If you are familiar with Google Earth 3D building layer, that's how these things were done. Essentially, they're SketchUp models with images, pictures pasted on them to make them look like the actual building. If you're going to do this, make sure you have Use as Texture checked in this box. So I'll pick the one of that building and we're going to open it. And it's going to come in with an image of the building. And this thing's going to fit perfect. Now let's do that again. That's not quite what I wanted. Jumpy with the mouse. Okay. That image will come in hung up on your cursor, the paint bucket here. I was looking to see if the sun was turned on in this. I guess not. Click on that bottom left corner and drag this out holding down the mouse button. And just drag it to the other edge. And it fits perfect, right? 100% right. Now, you can change this, and that's the whole issue here. If you right click on this guy, there's texture and position. So right click, texture, position from the context menu. And that's what texture actually looks like. It's essentially 9 squares. Here in this case rectangles. The reproductions essentially of the image texture that you just put in. Right here now you can see there's 4 pins. There are 2 types of pins. These are called fixed pins, and if you uncheck that, these are apparently unfixed pins. What you do with this is you grab these pins, click on it, and drag it over to the corner of the building in the image. And get as close as you can. You can always adjust this as you go along. What I'm trying to do is get this image corners and just one face. And now what we're going to do is drag those corners to the face of the building block that we built in SketchUp. They will click in. That one didn't work too well. There we go. It's not quite where I want it on the building. Let's get it here. It's better. And we'll take the last one here. Now let's get this right. Okay. So if I uncheck that, now you can do every side of this building the same way. So here's your representation of this building. I knew the height was right, I knew the footprint was right, and actually off of Google Earth that footprint could have been good enough. Looks like I'm a little off over here. So I'll right click texture and position again, and I'll grab the corner of the building and stretch that to fit this face a little better. I can use that same image on the left side of this building if I'd like. File, import that same picture and open and drag that across here. I can do the same thing now with the side. So I do file, texture, position, and take these pins and drag the other corners here to the other part of the building. Now I'm just picking up the side. It's good actually to have a photograph that's from the corner, if you will. And I'm trying to see my building under here. There it is. Okay, I gotta find that again. Clicked on the wrong one. Position. Okay. Hopefully this will work this time. If it doesn't, I'm going to skip it, but you get the idea. I'm just trying to find the corners of the building here, and I'm going to do the same thing again. Well, I'm missing something, and I apologize for that. Okay, we're still good. This can get really funky looking. But if you get it eventually right. I didn't do too well. But there's the idea. And it's a little harder with that side piece, as you might imagine. I usually do that better. If you want to use this texture on the back side of the building, you can. Basically what's happening is you right click on this, actually in the materials box, you know, that dialog. You can sample this particular texture and you would just dump it on that side. Let's paint this white so you can see that a little better. Sample this material and drop it over here. So if the two sides of the building are equal, then you can do this rather rapidly. I apologize for that one. I could do a better job, but I don't really feel like spending too much more time on that. So what did we do with this thing? We can now create perspectives. This is all SketchUp. And remember the trees from the last version, that last little house? In this Google Earth image, I can actually see where the trees are supposed to be planted. These are existing. These would be new. So the city said they're going to be here, here, here. We can put the cars in, people in. And this doesn't take too long. These cars are just from 3D Warehouse. These people are from 3D Warehouse. And all of these are what's called Face Me components. So I don't know if I can get you to see it. You can see they're actually flat. And that's fine because they turn when you look at them from a different point of view. So they're always going to look decent. Saves a lot of energy in your drawing. Makes it easier to work. Faster to work. You know, street elevation, much like we just did with that house. We have a street elevation. This is our new building. Don't judge my architecture here. This is just a quickie. So an east elevation, or street elevation, an axonometric. We can do a zoom in to the corner. And one of the things I want you to notice when I did that is the style changed. This is a real hard line drawing. And that's kind of okay, but for presentations, I prefer something that's a little softer. So what this does is looks like a pencil drawing. That's not going to affect the existing building too much, but it'll affect your drawing. So if you're doing presentations, think about the style you're going to pick. That guy right there, I can't remember his name, famous soccer player of some sort. Little top view. We can add some sky to this. Now this sky was added. It's kind of an interesting way to do sky. And I think we talked about backgrounds the last version. Remember the styles version of background? That's what that is. That's a underlay. So if you weren't hanging around at that time, we can go to styles. Now this is 2015, so it's going to look a little different. And we go to whatever we're in, watercolor. Let's pick one of these others. And if we go to edit and we pick watermark, we can select a sky. I'm just going to someplace in my files that I already have that. You go to background. This is all the selections you have to make when you're doing a watermark. Go to next, next, and make sure you uncheck lock aspect ratio. It'll stretch to fit the screen, but if the image isn't big enough, you can see it's kind of small up here. Check lock, unlock aspect ratio, and finish. And so there's your sky. That sky doesn't move around. You can't do anything with it, but it's a really quick way to add a nice backdrop to your model. This is another version of a style. Here, I kind of like this because the context building is actually just a white box, which isn't too bad of a deal. I know as architect, I always like to make those kind of go away. This is the same pencil drawing, but all the materials have been stripped out of it. And then we did a rendering, like so. This rendering actually improves the look of this quite a bit. I think my building actually looks better than it does in the SketchUp model. The sky is the background. That's the stuff we did on that, on that existing box, and trees and people and cars. So you can get a pretty realistic deal. I probably only spent maybe 2 hours on that building at the most. Because like I say, I was getting paid $0. So I didn't want to spend too much time. When somebody doesn't want to pay you, don't spend too much time on it. That rendering is actually in this whole drawing. So that's just a big billboard within the overall drawing. So I just created this, plastered the rendering on it, and it's all within the same drawing. So it's actually a scene within this bigger drawing. So that's trying to find context that exists already to put your new building in. The last one was finding the context to go around my building. Kind of the same thing, but a little different approach. This context was used to design the building, and in the other case, the building was designed first and stuck into context. Okay, so that's using it to find existing context. I'll show you another way to do that. Sorry about all these layers of stuff. Within Google Earth, I can actually recall a specific location, and there's one in Chicago that we'll use. And the existing buildings are actually already in 3D Warehouse. So I'm going to use geolocation again and add a location. It'll come. There we go. So now we'll put in, let's see, the address is 401 North Wabash in Chicago. So now I can get a little more specific. Illinois. And select region. That's not what I wanted to do. Sorry. Wrong thing. Search. So this actually is the address for Mr. Trump's big tower, so you can see how much money he's actually got when he's going to be president. I don't know if we really want that guy, but we'll find out. So that's Trump Tower. This is obviously a map of this area of Chicago. That's the Chicago River and all the other buildings around it. So we're going to go ahead and select this as a region. And we'll grab that. So this will throw it into our drawing. And in 3D Warehouse, you can actually locate buildings in Chicago. Some of these I've already extracted from 3D Warehouse, so I'll show you those first. You can download them from 3D Warehouse just into your computer and then import them into here, which I'll show you first. Go to File, Import, and I have a place already set up, nice for me, Chicago buildings, and Trump Tower is here. So I just click on that, gives you a little image of what it's going to look like. It's not blue, it's actually gold. And click on that, and here's the cool part, just stuck it right in here. It knows where to go. Why does it do that? These are right out of Google Earth. If you're familiar with the 3D building layer in Google Earth, these are actually the SketchUp models that make that up, and they are actually photographs plastered to this model. Now it looks blue because obviously apparently that's the sky reflecting on it, but it's really this kind of yucky gold color, to tell you the truth. This building, I think this is actually maybe the intended building, because I think it's actually way down about half of the height of that upper tower. You believe it? Trump ran out of money. There is attached to this, and you can tell this is an old image from Google Earth because it's in black and white, and the rest of this is color. So you can identify older images from Google Earth as black and white, and the newer ones as color. I can double click on this, and you'll see this base is actually the Google Earth image. It's highlighted in red. If I right click on this, I can unlock it, and then I can delete it and go back. So now that was part of that building. So you may have something like that happen as you go along. You can get rid of it. I'll do a couple others. File, Import, and let's see, we'll pick the Marina City, Import. That should go over here. Yep. And one of the things I want you to notice about this is my image wasn't actually big enough to accommodate all of that. So that little image that was on the base of the Trump Tower actually is helpful here, as now we have an extension of what we had before. You can actually bring in more imagery at some point if you'd like. I think I have one other. I think it's this bridge. Pretty much anything you want in the world you'll probably find. Michigan Avenue Bridge. Import. I think I imported this once before and it's a little funky. That's it. There's kind of a weird thing going on in Chicago. There's actually a street below the streets. Somewhere along the line in Chicago, somebody decided that the first floor should actually be the basement and the second floor should be the first floor. So there's layers of stuff going on here. That's why this bridge looks like it's up in the air. Because actually, this street is actually up in the upper elevation. So if you're doing context, you're going to build a building within a city. Probably that's the only place it's going to work. I don't think you'll be out in a rural area and find, Joe's barn down the street. But you saw you could trace it. You can recreate that pretty easily. How do I get these buildings? It's through the 3D warehouse. You go File, 3D warehouse, and Get Models. And here, rather than being very general, or I can be more general, I can type in just Chicago, Illinois. And what's going to do is go out and search for everything it finds that's a building in Chicago, Illinois. These all have been identified as that. And we only found 6,522 of them. I don't know which ones of these might actually be in this particular space. This one might. It's on Wacker, which is nearby. Maybe we can find the Wrigley building. Let's pick this one. So we can download this. I'm not sure the proximity of this to what we just did, but we'll take a shot at it. We want to load it directly. Yes. Okay, it's not on that site, but that's the relative location between these two spaces. I think here, if I go to geolocation, I can add more imagery. So now I could expand this and come out here, select, I think this region, and we'll expand this out. I think, come on. What it did is give me, let's go, okay, we'll go this way. And we'll grab that. Hopefully this will come in somewhere that we need it. Okay, a little bigger image to work with. So you're not stuck with what you first picked. That one I'm kind of surprised is way down there, but apparently it is. This along here, along the river, is actually Wacker Drive, which is a two-tiered street. It's one of those where the basement is now used to be the first floor. But again, like we did in that other image, if we don't have buildings, we can come in here and trace them with Sketchup and pull them up. I'm looking for one that's actually at kind of a funky angle, but I don't see any other than Trump Tower. You got one over there. And there's one right here. What we would do with that's going to be really hard to trace with a SketchUp because, we don't really have an axis here to work on. So what you can do with that, and you're going to find this happen quite a bit, you have some skewed stuff. I guess this bridge over here is skewed too. We can move the axis and reorient it to this angle temporarily. So the axis tool is over here in the large toolbar. We just come in here on this building. Let's use this part of it and pick on a corner and drag the red out parallel with that wall and the green. So now we've reoriented the axes, and it's very easy to draw a rectangle here now. The idea being that you need to have 90-degree corners, to draw this easily. And these buildings are skewed. I know what that is. That's the Mormon temple over there. Okay. Now, if those buildings are in 3D Warehouse, which I'm sure they probably are, we could import them as well. But if they're not, this would be the way to do that. Now, your axis is reoriented. We click on that and right-click. Let's see. I'm actually within that group there. Where is it? They used to. I think it's because of where I'm at. You can usually reset that axis. And I just can't get to that axis because of this image. Let's see if I can get it out here. There it is. I had to go all the way outside here and click reset, and it'll throw it back to that. That's called, you know, the world's axis, I guess. In most countries or most cities, you get this nice grid. So if the grid's skewed, I know Denver's grid is at 45 degrees, so you'd have to change that so you could draw everything. Just like the ones we did before, we can draw streets, roads, buildings, sidewalks, whatever you'd like to do. It just depends how much time you want to spend on that. Okay, that's the idea behind that. Again, with shadows, you can throw them on. So now you can see in these tall buildings, you know, that throws a pretty healthy shadow across all this stuff over here. So in an urban situation, the shadow studies are even more valuable. If you start changing this to noon. I had a fellow that worked for me end up working for an interior architect in Chicago. And it actually was beneficial to them. You say, well, why do you want to see exteriors of buildings? Two, the shadow study, and one, I guess, was when he looked out the windows of the space he was working on, they could see the buildings outside because these had been placed around their particular location. So, you know, if you look out your window, here's the building you're going to see. And it's amazing how much clients appreciated that. Okay, so we got that. Sun and shadows locate the building in the real world. Okay. We've got, unfortunately, it's still a whole half hour, so we're going to go through one other thing that we talked about. That's pretty much geolocation. There's maybe some other stuff you could do with this, but those are the key items. I think importing buildings is kind of cool. So you can go out and find them. If you can't find them, like I said, build them yourself. This is the Untitled building. We're just shipped over here. Remember I was talking about terrain and how Google Earth's terrain is just kind of okay. Let's look at Chicago. It's probably not going to be anything here. Chicago is basically a bunch of farm fields. And you can see the terrain there is like minimal, almost nothing. You would think even the river would be sunk down, and it's not. All right, so you can see how valuable that is. You go to some place like Pittsburgh, Asheville, North Carolina, any place with hills. Pittsburgh is a really great example. It's like endless hills, bridges galore. Let's look at doing our own topography for a minute. We'll fill up this last half hour with doing that and look at putting a model into that. If you have questions about geolocation in general, please go ahead and ask them while we're working on this next thing, because I've pretty well covered that. We'll draw a piece of property here, and we'll make it a whole lot smaller than that. Let's call it 200 feet by 150 feet. It should shrink down to almost nothing, because that's almost the entire city of Chicago over there. So if you have topography, and I'll do this quickly, go to my website, sketchupacademy.com. You'll actually find a video there that's called From PDF to 3D Topography. We're going to emulate that a little bit here so you can see how to do this. I'm going to pretend that I have a engineer's drawing here. So we're just going to make this topography up. But it's the same procedure. I'm going to take some lines and just pretend I know what the topography is. And I actually do this from time to time just to make my model look a little better. What we're doing is cutting faces. So let's say that's my first topo line. And at times, like I say, I'll just make this up and just to make the model look a little better. This would be, let's consider this tracing somebody else's topography. So if you have something from an engineer that you can throw on here, the only thing that's going to work is a JPEG. PDF won't work, but if you take a PDF and you convert it to a JPEG, say in Photoshop, something of that nature, that will work. You see how that's on the blue axis? That's not going to help me. I need to make sure I'm on the face of this rectangle that we drew here. And I'll get maybe a little further apart. So you guys know in topography, the further apart these lines are, the shallower the slope. I'll make something a little nuts over there. So now you get to watch me draw lines. How much fun is that? These are cutting faces, so make sure when you're drawing this it says on face or from point. One of those options shows up. Okay, let's call that good. That's my topography. I've cut it into a face. Oop, there's one that went on the blue axis. Let's fix that. That's a no-no. Don't do that. So we'll redraw that. Okay. So each one of these would represent a 1 foot step or 2 foot, whatever you happen to have in your particular drawing or locale. I'm going to use push-pull. I'll select the first one. I'm going to just double check, make sure these are all individual faces. They are. And we'll use push-pull to move the first one up, let's say 12 inches. So a foot. I'm going to turn the sun off here just so it doesn't bother us. Now pull the second one up and reference the first one so it matches, and then come up another 12. So I'm building the lovely, styrofoam models that we built back when I was in school. I don't know if you do that anymore with computers. I know I don't anymore. So what I'm building is basically the steps of the site. Sorry, it's kind of spinning around on me here a little bit. So I'm just pulling them up, matching the previous face so they match, and then adding 12. Pull this last one up, add 12. So if you look at this from the side, there's your steps, so it's the old cardboard model, whatever you guys used to do. I know what I used to do is build it out of cardboard and styrofoam and anything else I could find that was cheap. Definitely cheap. Let's see, I think I went out of perspective. There we go. I'm going to paint this whole thing white just so you can see it a little better. Where's my materials? Here we go. Pick some white, throw it on there. Guess it already is white. Just looks gray to me. What you do with this, we're going to be using the sandbox tools to create topography here. And bless me, it's not wanting to stay where I want it. What you do is you need to just preserve these risers, or those tops of the steps. Everything else here is really extraneous. I'm going to go in and just actually erase everything except those steps. The sandbox tool is actually, this stuff would get a little crazy, how it would affect that tool. Because it tries to connect all these lines together, and you get some results that are not really satisfactory. So you have to take this step, which as you can see takes a ton of time. Negligible. So what you want to end up with is exactly what you're seeing here. Consider it like the risers in a stair. This thing just wants to not behave. So again, erase the ones on the other side. Any extraneous stuff, just get rid of it. Now this is my technique. Somebody else may come along with a different one that you like better, but this one I think works pretty well. Okay, so there we have it. Essentially topography. If you had a drawing, a CAD drawing, and you have Pro, from say a CAD drawing from your engineer, you can actually import that particular drawing right into AutoCAD. If you're really lucky, the engineer has actually put z-values on his topography, and if you bring that into SketchUp, that will actually show essentially what you have here. It'll actually elevate all the topography lines, and then you just select them all like we're going to do here, and it's quick, down and dirty. This is a little more complex, but you can see it doesn't take that much time. Highlight, pick all of this with a window, go to your sandbox tools, which are these guys here. If you don't have that, go to the View menu, I guess in 2015. No, it'll still be in the same place here in 2016. So just pick that toolbar if you don't have it. And it's one that's probably not typically there. It's right here. So check it, sandbox. And the very first one is from contours, which is what we have. These are contours. We just click on this. And what's going to happen, like almost instantaneously, is it throws your shell right over the top of this. And I'll just separate this for right now. It might be a little hard to see here, but I'm going to turn on hidden geometry so you can see this a little better. That's what you get. The topography is actually, what we built down here is a skin has been thrown over the top of it. So it's interpolated all of that and put it into actually a slope. That is a group, so it can be separated from this stuff if you like, and you can either keep it where it was and make a copy of it rather than moving it. So make a copy maybe straight up here. I like to keep these things in line. We took a house, and this is going to be the last part of this. I'll show you how this works. I want to be able to map a house out on this property. I'm just going to draw some lines vertically, or one actually. I'm going to take my tape measure tool and pick all these corners. So I want to create essentially a site plan up above this. So I'll take my line tool, staying on axes here, hopefully, there we go. Missed just by a tad. I'm going to erase all this stuff here. So what I've done is I've created a site plan. So a site plan, the topography from sandbox and kind of our construction down here. We'll put this a little closer, although it really doesn't matter. So like we did in the original laying out the site on for that first house, I'm going to paint this with a transparent color, glass if you will, and throw it on here so we can see through it. Why would I do that? I can draw my site plan right on this particular surface. If I take this and look at it, camera, parallel projection, and top view, top view, please. That's a flat version of my site plan. That topography you see down below is actually not on this face. See, it's actually stacked like that. I'll go back to the top view. So what I can do here, and I'm just going to make something up. I'm going to put a house. See, that's my house. It's a little faint. Maybe a garage is over here, something like that. And we'll just pretend we know what we're doing. What I'm doing is cutting faces out of this particular surface that's up here. And I'll just delete anything that's extraneous. That one, I guess, would be. We can put driveways on here. So let's pretend that's our garage. Put a driveway here. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to transfer this information down to that topography. Now I'll put a sidewalk in. And you should be far more accurate than this. Okay. There's a tool called Drape in this particular sandbox tools, which is the 5th one down. And what that will do is it'll take geometry from here and drop it onto there. That's a group. That's important that that stay a group. And what you do here is just select all of these parts. Make sure I got them all. Looks like it. And then pick Drape. And what I'm going to do is just come down here and touch that. So what's happened is it's taken all that information up here and it's superimposed it on this topography. It's very hard to draw that on that kind of undulating surface. So this is a way to transfer things from, a flat drawing, if you will, onto a hillside. With that, for example, if this were an actual house, I'm going to copy this just so you can see what we can do here. Let's say I made a really fancy flat roofed house here. Now that's kind of interesting because the whole thing is transparent. So we'll change that. We'll make it white again. And I'll make a group out of that. We'll go ahead and take this now and set it on this corner. So this gives us a way to know where to put the building, add that information to the site, and it also now locates this building where we want it. And if you notice this end of the building, so now you can really tell there's slope in this site, right? This end of the building's up in the air. So what I'll do is get inside this group, double click to edit it, and I'll use the push-pull tool and just drag this down until it hits the ground. So now we have a true interrelationship between the house and the ground. It's a lot easier to see now that there's a slope here, right? We may, in the end, decide our house needs to be higher because our driveway's not working, something of that nature, but it gives us the insight to do these things. Get rid of some of these extra lines. That one I'm actually going to keep because that might be a nice garage door. So you can actually even design your building right on the site if you so desire. Okay, so this end over here, it'll turn for me, it's trying to save right now. There we go. This end over here is up in the air. Maybe a deck should be on here, right? So I'm drawing these outside the group intentionally. And I can pull this out and say, well, I need a deck right there. Okay. So the insight now is there. This information, I think, versus the Google Earth topography, I think this is a much better way to do it because you know this is right. I know that the one in Google Earth is a little suspect, actually a lot suspect. You guys have any questions about this stuff in general? We're sort of approaching what I can tell you. How about the local audience? No?
Mr. Krupp, we do have one question.
Okay, shoot.
The question is, how did you reset the pins to move the building corners?
Ah, okay. Back to that one. Back to this one. This one right here, I guess, is what you're talking about. Let's.
I believe so.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm going to go ahead and paint this whole thing white just so you can see it again. Not layers. I don't understand why this is shifting back and forth. It's over here. I'm just going to close this drawing so it stays out of my way. I'm going to pick that group, triple click on it so I get the whole thing, and I just want to repaint it. This is 2015, so it's a little different. Okay, so that's our box, right? And that's where this thing goes. I'm going to put it in perspective because it's a little weird to do this in parallel projection. So we have our building. I'm going to import an image, file, import. There's our image. We'll open that and get down here on this face. Oh, you know what? It's not going to work. That can't be a group. I'll explode this. You can't put an image on a group. Doesn't work. So I'll stretch this out. So what we did, let me see if I can turn these trees off. Get them out of the way. I think I probably have trees on a layer. Yep. The magic of layers. Use layers as much as you can because it does help you eliminate things. So if we click on that surface and you right click, you pick texture and then position. Now the key thing here is all these pins are yellow. If you right click on this and pick fixed pins, you get a whole different group of pins. Those are for distorting or rotating, that sort of thing, more with like wood textures or tile or something like that. Not so good for this. So right click, make sure fixed pins is turned off. All you do is click on a pin and just once drag it to the corner of the building. So it's not really a drag, it's just move. Click once. Don't hold down the mouse button, just click again. So you do that with all four. And here I'm going to have to approximate a little bit because those cars are in the way. From here, you just click on a pin, hold down the left mouse button, and drag it till you find the corner. Sometimes it's a little hard to find the corner of that face because it's underneath all this stuff. But just click on that pin, hold it, and move it. Hold it, move it, release. And there we go. This one's a little out of whack, so we can do that again. Texture, position. I want to move this pin, click, drop, and slide it over. It's a little better. One last thing you can do with this, since we have the time, you can actually carve this up if you like. Hopefully that answered the question. If it hasn't, let me know, Aurora. You can actually create three-dimensional building. Yes?
I believe that did, but we do have, yes, it looks like it did.
Okay.
We do have another follow-up question. If you would like to finish explaining. Okay.
Go ahead.
What would be the best way to put a larger parking lot on a sloped area? It's not plausible to show a slightly sloped parking lot or road in SketchUp.
You want it sloped? Is that what he's saying? It would be on a hillside, something of that nature.
Yes. What would be the best way to put a larger parking lot on a sloped area? And it said 2 to 4%.
Must be an engineer. We'll just take this one. Now, I don't know if you want the whole parking lot sloped or not, but initially you could draw the parking lot all by itself, just out in space. So build the structure first. Don't worry about the slope. If you're worried about slope, then you may have to start building this in a little bit more angle. I'm going to pretend there's some slope here. I would just rotate this. Use the rotate tool and grab this and tilt it. Now, I don't know if he's talking about this kind of thing, or he wants, let's make it 2.5 degrees. I'm not sure what 4% slope actually is. Something like that. So right now, that's on a slope. If we have some grade, I don't know if we have that in this model still. I don't think so. We'll just draw some grade real quick. Do our same bit. Let's move this a little bigger. We'll just put a little bit of slope in this. I'll do it a little, I'm going to exaggerate here so you can see it better. So as I'm doing this, if I'm not doing what he's asking, please tell him to ask maybe again. Or I don't know if he hears me. I suppose he does. I think that's wrong. Those lines don't turn light for you when you're doing this. You know you haven't cut that face. So you see how they're turning light when I'm drawing them. When I haven't finished that line, it's going to be dark until I do finish it.
He said that yes, you're heading in the right direction with the with where you're going with this.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pull these up like we did before. I'll pick the second one. I'm going to pull this up like 2 feet. Let's see how much that gives me. I'll go 4 feet just to exaggerate this. Obviously, you can build your site and your model independently. That's what I'm trying to show you. And put them together. That's what it boils down to. So make them each a group before you do this stuff so they don't stick to each other. I'm a big proponent on that. If you don't make groups or components, you're kind of missing the boat. You're really making your life more difficult than it needs to be. So we'll go through the same thing, erasing these faces. This bottom line I think I want to keep just so it gives me a reference at the bottom. Go ahead and erase that. If you wanted to do a garage where you actually have the different slopes, I know some of them have slopes that flatten out in places. I tell you the truth, parking garages are a maze to me. They're actually amazing. I don't know how somebody figures them out. I've been in one that you couldn't get out of. Okay, so that's our site. I'm probably going to rotate this garage around. I'll make that a group. Actually, you know what? I don't have to make that a group. It'll make a group on its own. Use the sandbox tool from contours. Drop that on there. What did I move that? 2.5? I think I rotated that.
Yep.
So I'll put it back 2.5. And we'll rotate it 90. So it's a little bit better with this slope. So I take this and move it into that site. I can now take and very easily understand what elevation of this parking lot is at what elevation on the site. One way to do this, let's see if I can get this in here. One way to know for sure where you're at that I've used, so just draw a rectangle out in space and make that a group. And I can take this rectangle and set it at whatever elevation I want. So I have these different contours. So if I say that's my main floor or that's my second floor, This makes it easy to move this up to that elevation. Okay, so what I'm done is just taking that topography and extend it out with a rectangle. And I might look at this and go, you know, it's kind of too far underground. Maybe I want to move this up some from here. Maybe I'm going to put a ramp that goes up 6 feet to the main level. So if this doesn't work and you're looking to tilt this, which I don't know if you want to, but it sounds like you do. I can take this whole thing and now rotate it. Let's call it 3 degrees. Just type in 3 and hit enter. Now I don't know the right angle. I'm not too far off. I don't know if I want to park my car there. I think I might slide off. But does that help? I think I'm answering the question. See if we get a response.
I will let you know if there is a follow-up question or comment.
Okay.
Yes, let's see, it says, yes, making separate groups will help, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, and using that plane to set up the